In the previous episode, I worked on the foundations of Project Do. I set up the rocks and the footpath. I got them in the places where I want them to be. And the next thing that I could do is to fill it up with soil. After working on the foundations, I placed an order with SoilWorx, an order of 1 cubic meter of soil and 1 cubic meter of drainage scoria. That's after figuring out how much soil I would need, looking at the dimensions, the volume of the plot. The delivery is scheduled for today, so let's prepare for that. To make things easier to work with, I'm going to clear up this space and lay down a tarp here and dump all of the soil and the rocks. That way I don't have to go far just to wheel over the rocks and the soil. Just do them here and it would be faster that way. So in preparation, I'm going to lay down the tarp, just clear up the space, remove the hose, and we'll be ready. Apart from that, I also have to lay some tarp out in front because that's where the truck would be dumping all of the stuff. Now all we have to do is wait. I'm looking at the real-time tracking and yeah, estimate is about 10 minutes from now. Not too long. It's here. I think I hear it. There it is. Here it is. And now for the not so fun part, wheeling them in. Finally done shifting off the pebbles in the soil. It's a lot of work. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to start filling up this mound, this raised bed. But the problem is there's still a lot of rocks in my way. To make things a lot easier for me, I'm going to remove all of these large rocks first. That way I could just focus on spilling stuff to the ground. Now with those rocks out of the way, I can now work on building my soil mix. I've shown you this in several episodes in the past. My usual mix is composed of 1 part scoria and 1 part garden soil, and this is exactly why I ordered 1 cubic meter of each. But in this instance, I'm thinking that maybe I could go slightly above 1:1, more scoria than usual, because I'm not yet sure what type of plants I'll be using here. It would be a combination of the large echeverias and the tiny ground cover plants. And not knowing what plants I'll be using means that I need to make sure that I could accommodate the more sensitive of those, which means that I would need to have my base soil more draining than usual. That would save me a lot of headaches in the long run, because that means that I do not have to dig out and replace the soil again, like what I'll be using with this arc. The soil that I used in this arc is not as absorbent as the mix that I normally use now. And this mainly has to do with the type of soil that I was using. In the past, I was just using all those cheap 25-liter bags. The soil wasn't as good as I hoped. It contained a lot of bark, a lot of wood chips, and in some batches a lot of sawdust, which means that the absorption wasn't there. The water would just tend to run off from the top. It wasn't draining well. The water isn't getting to the plants, or at least not a lot of them are getting to it. This explains why some of the large echeveria in the ground here are a bit dehydrated, and I have to fix that. So as you can see, I am all about that. I look at results of my previous attempts, and this is basically one of the reasons why I do renovations like these, because I get to look and study the results of my previous landscapes and see if I should improve on them or just leave them be. In this case, I would definitely need to improve the soil. So let's start. To make access for my wheelbarrow easier, I'm going to fix this part, make it level, because this is still quite deep. So yeah. And now that I have the extra soil, I'm going to properly raise the steps now. For now, I'll just let it lay on top of these rocks, but I'll be adding some liners, some maybe Tuscan rock around here, just to signify a higher step. Yeah. pass the Zachary test. Oh, it's falling down. Whoa. It's getting dark, Zach. Let's go home. See you tomorrow. I'm done filling up the unoccupied part of the raised bed, and now I have to start working on clearing up this arc. I'm still not sure what I want to do with these plants, so I'm going to place them temporarily in trays until I figure out what to do with them. So the old soil in the ark is a bit hydrophobic. It has lots of sawdust and wood chips. And I think I would like to amend it, aggregate it with some of my scoria. That way it would be improved. So yeah. I've got a bunch of loose volcanic rocks laying around and I haven't figured out what I want to do with them yet. So I'm thinking that I would just place them on top of the raised bed until I figure out where they should go. At least by having them on top of the bed, I could just roll them around into position. No lifting required. And at long last, here we are, done with the heavy lifting. So I've managed to finish filling up the raised bed, backfilling it with my well-draining soil mix. I even got to fix some of the old soil, which is really good. I think the next parts would be a lot easier since it no longer requires heavy lifting, at least physically. But in exchange, I think it still requires a lot of heavy lifting in terms of thinking of the design. I'm working with a blank slate, which means that there's not going to be a limit to the creativity that I can invoke. Now, as for the spaces, I came to realize as I was clearing out my garden, I have a lot of plants, lots and lots of plants. So I think I'll be doing a tapestry, that way I'd be able to use up a lot of them. As I mentioned before, the area where the ark used to be, I'm thinking of placing the larger echeveras in here because I want this to be very prominent. I want this to be a display area for the large plants, especially since those are mainly the types of plants that I want to collect. In this part, I would be making a tapestry involving lots of my smaller rosettes, and I would also be displaying my agavoides collection. I keep saying agavoides display, but I think I might end up including other plants that have similarly shaped rosettes, such as the colorata hybrids. So basically anything spiky or bowl-shaped, they would go here. So the large plants here, freelies, carunculated plants, gibifloras. And on this side would be the bowl or the spiky shaped echeverias. Of course, there's also the matter of branding. I'm thinking of placing a bowl right here, and using pebbles, I'll be recreating my logo, place it prominently in the front as part of the tapestry. So yeah, it's something that I would have to think about. I think I've already used up my daylight and strength, so I might just go and call it a day. So I'll see you in the next episode. We're going to do a lot of planting and designing. I'm so excited. So I'll see you then. Bye. This episode is sponsored by SoilWorx. They have been so great with providing me with all of my landscaping needs, be it pots or rocks or soil, and I would like to pass on some of that to you. If you ever find yourself in need of potting mix or pots, then just head over to the SoilWorx Selection Center in Deer Park, mention my name, Chuck of Cerriscapades, and you'll receive a 10% discount. That's right, 10% discount at SoilWorx Deer Park. Just mention my name. Have fun. Cerriscapades is made possible with the support of my Patreon sponsors. Patreon allows you to support content creators like me with a small monthly donation. You can pledge your support by heading over to patreon.com/Cerriscapades. If you're in Australia, I've got some of my plants for sale. Check out my plant shop at cerriscapades.com/theplant shop with dashes.